Hello, welcome back to Benang Live Learning. In this episode, I want to talk about how I created this kind of simulations, or is it some kind of art? I don't know it yet, but it's basically something I created using geometry nodes. Although I still not 100% understand how the simulation nodes actually works, but I managed to create something like this. So we have an empty, and then as you can see, as I move around the empty, the geometry nodes will continuously generating something that's kind of organic. It's just like lines. I give it like a pink color, but I could just give it like black color like that, and yeah, any color basically. Just thought maybe pink or yellow or green looks a bit nicer. So it could be like an artwork. I don't know it yet, but I like what David Hockney says about we just like making pictures, and whether the picture is gonna be an artwork or is it gonna be an art or something, that doesn't really matter. People just like making pictures, and people actually like seeing other people making pictures. Maybe you like actually seeing yourself making picture, like Picasso drawing on piece of glasses, it's a, and then he takes video of himself just doodling on the like flat glass. Maybe that's what I'm trying to make here. So I don't know if it's an art or not, but I will explain the process anyway, so that's probably gonna be more interesting. I could just create a grease pencil blank and then just start doodling. Okay, you can't really see it because the radius is probably too small, but I could just doodle like this. you know this is grease pencil. It's on the some kind of hidden 2D plane, and I could just do like scribbles. It's very primitive, and the scribbles is only like a certain radius, unless I change the radius on the fly, make it smaller or bigger, or I just use modifier to change the doodle size. It's random scribbles. It's still on the 2D plane, unless I use grease pencil in 3D using like some kind of VR tools. It's just gonna be like basic doodles. That's grease pencil, and it's pretty much static unless I use modifier and make it kind of wiggling. This one, however, this one is like I said, I'm using simulation nodes inside geometry nodes, and it's basically creating this curve, and it seems like the points of the curves keeps on moving. So in order to understand this 100%, I recommend you to watch this video, Easy Particle Simulations Using Geometry Nodes Blender 3.6 by Khamurai. This video, okay, it's only 12 minutes, but if you understand this and you can recreate it from scratch yourself, I think it's pretty powerful. Okay, just ignore these ads. I will probably give you the link to that video, but I will explain what's going on with this anyway. So enough of those explanation and art. We're just making something out of an empty. So it's very philosophical. This curve, of course, already been remeshed, and I'm remeshing the curve using this second geometry nodes. If I turn this off, we only have these lines. There's an empty, just drawing the lines, and the lines kind of moving up. And it's real time, right? It's on every frame, it's gonna do a calculation and processing, and it's continuously generating something that's slightly more 3D than the usual doodles. I could try to draw some things, but it keeps on moving, so it's very dynamic. So the lines, like I said, is the second geometry nodes will actually turn this into this kind of squiggle lines, and I'm resembling the curves that's in the that's coming out from the previous nodes. That's I probably will explain. Okay, it's looks complicated, but really uh, it's not. Okay, so let me try to explain. So basically, I started with a single empty. So there's an empty position that I can move around dynamically. Okay, so we need that empty position. So this is what I started with, an empty object, and I get the locations, and also, okay, I have the scale. The scale of the empty actually will control some kind of like a randomness or like a spherical space where the doodles here will happen. Okay, just okay, in this case I just make the empty around that size. Okay, and the simulations will just gonna randomly create points around that area. Okay, that should be clear. So an empty location scale, and the location goes into the, okay, the scale goes into this random value. Yeah, and then we add this random value into this add, and I'm using that position to generate a points. In this case, just a single points. I could put in different value like 10 or 100 points, and the result will be slightly different as well. So it's a little bit more chaotic if I do that. Maybe, yeah, and there's also these hanging lines. In this case, I will just keep it simple, just a single points. A single points continuously being generated where the empty is located. Okay, so that's first. And then we have this set point radius. This is not important unless you want to, instead of making lines, if you want to just make dots with random scale, you actually need to consider this set point radius. In this case, don't worry about that. And I just pipe these points into simulation zones. Okay, it seems it's really simple. Just the points randomly being generated around this empty position, and then we just set the positions, just randomize the position slightly. There are actually two set position nodes. If I turn this one off, this one has an offset of 0.4. That's why it's keep going up. If I minus this, just gonna keep going down. It's really weird, but it's actually dynamic. So if I just keep moving the empty, I can change its value. If it's minus, it goes down. If it's a different value, it's gonna send. This is kind of like the force, like the gravity, kind of pulling our artwork. We can actually just zero this out, so we don't have any kind of extra force. So it's just like an empty scattering points, and then every time there's a point, it's gonna connect the dots. Okay. Yeah, it's basically that simple. This set position with offset connected to the noise, and with the noise we can increase the scale, so it's gonna go crazier. So this is more chaotic than before, and it's gonna go a lot faster. It's basically just noise, and I scaled the noise. Okay, the noise has been normalized using this add -5. And I can increase this value. We can scale this noise, it's up to you, but any variable or parameters that you change will affect our lines. So I think, yeah, this is like I'm writing hello here, but still, you know, the lines have control. So it's like there's an outside force that's kind of affecting the artwork. Okay, so that's interesting concept, very metaphorical. So what's happening next, right? After we have all these dots or points that's being generated, we connect the dots. And in order to connect the dots, I'm actually using this Erindale ETK Points to Bezier. Okay, you need to download ETK tools, and then you just, you know, append and then just bring in this ETK Points to Bezier. Okay, we need that to connect the dots. Otherwise, you just use sphere chalk add-on. But in this case, we just use geometry nodes. So inside ETK Points to Bezier, we have more nodes, and this is how we could connect the dots. Just take a screenshot of this and then recreate it yourself, or just download ETK tools. And then there's this delete geometry, and I think this is to clean up the points. If I didn't delete the geometry, there's actually some kind of weirdness happening here. Maybe the connect the dots geometry nodes by ETK needs to be updated for latest geometry nodes. But anyhow, I use this quick fix. Just delete the geometry based on the end point selection where the start size match the frame, and then so we don't have the connecting lines. So supposedly what's happening is, okay, if I pin this, what we really want, if we doodle something and if we want to connect the first and last points, we turn on the cyclic. But I don't know why we need to delete the geometry in this case. Maybe it's there's some kind of complexions happening because of the simulation zones and all sort of things. But anyhow, it's yeah, this is what's going on. You know, we just in summary, it's just like a single points that we can control, this empty, this nothing in 3D space, and it's generating random points. Okay, the random point is being placed. It depends on the scale of this radius of this empty. And then the simulation nodes is drawing the points on the fly, generating 1 points on each frame updates. At the moment, we probably have 1050 points. And then it's gonna connect the dots, and it's creating these lines, and the Bezier can be very curvy if we increase this value. You know, it's gonna be super curvy lines. Maybe we prefer that curvy lines. We need to increase the resolutions in that case. And then after we do that, the next geometry nodes, the next one after, then turn the curve lines into something else. Resample the curve. So we do another resampling. And then we set the curve radius here. And then the curve radius will generate our curve. So we can randomize the curve radius. We can control and resample the curve whatever we like. So we have this kind of like worm-like shapes. Yeah, so that's basically what it is. If I could make this empty really small. If the empty is really small, that means our curve randomness will be less random. But I quite like this kind of chaotic threads. It's a little bit like, you know, threads or Twitter. You know, people randomly post text at the same time, and if you read any kind of, you will find any kind of topics. And in this case, you know, it's just like a random threads. Random threads is if you Google random threads, Benang Kusut, or random threads, yeah, you get you get random threads. But if you Google Benang Kusut, which is like a Indonesian for random threads, you actually get something that's quite different. Isn't that interesting, right? These threads can be any color. Yeah, but it's really interesting how different language can give you different result inside Google Images, and then the Google Images, of course, you can use the visual search to find more random threads. This is also something, if you want to recreate this using 3D, or you actually draw it by hands, which is something you can do, right? It's not necessarily art. I know people actually do this sometimes. They just doodle random threads. It's very natural. You can also use different color of pen. You can draw this. It's not necessarily art, but the act of drawing this kind of randomness is quite something. And then if it's colorful, maybe it's more aesthetics for your eyes. We don't know. This also inside Blender. Imagine if every thread is like different color. That's also gonna be quite something. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting for me, and this is also, of course, something that you can do using VR, but in this case we are just using Blender because that's open source. You can create this on any machines, any computers. You can even go to library and then just start making this. It's weird. I know you can just use grease pencil and make this, but in this case it's really still kind of organic and keeps moving. If I go back to the original geometry node setup, change some of the settings, maybe increase the chaos, or increase the scale of the noise, or actually reduce the scale of the noise, or increase the scale of the noise. That's going to give different effects, and I don't know what's the final result's going to be, but yeah, okay, it just reset itself because it goes over 2500 frames. Look, as it is, it just does that on the spot. But if we select the empty and start doodling again and start moving around the empty, it's gonna look more interesting. And this is the chaotic threads. Like I said, it's not necessarily art, but you can look at it all days if you want to. It's just like nature. It's organic, but it's really simplistic and primitives. I know it's primitives, but you can do it. You can do this live and you start doodling. If your doodle or lines resembles something that's in real life, it's gonna be something, right? For example, if you actually reduce this chaos, at the moment it's like worms, too random. If you zero this out and doodling, okay, we still have the chaos. Why? Because the randomness inside the lines itself. What if I turn this off? Still pretty random because of the positions, right? Because of the positions that we apply over here. Scale by random value. If we scale this to 0, maybe we're gonna get something that's less random. Totally not random, just a simple line drawing, just like grease pencil. So we can actually write proper message. Okay, basic cursive hello, and then we can start adding chaos and perhaps turn on the noise. Once again, increase the noise. If we turn this on, now the simulation takes over and it's moving the points on the fly. I know there are all kind of apps that actually does this, maybe processing, or I don't know, but I like the fact that Blender actually allows you to do this. You know, I really think it's quite something. So reset the position of the empty, view, frame selected. Okay, we have this thing again. Back from scratch. Now we can keep doing this. Make the scale bigger, and then so it's this is yeah, basically me and the computer. It's not AI. It's not exactly AI. It's just like a force, like a noise. Doing this doodle on top of my drawing, we end up with this chaotic looking threads. Yeah, it's just totally random. However, if you understand the whole setup, you actually learn something, you know. It's random, chaotic stuff. I mean, you probably will learn something if you learn more from this video, easy particle simulations. In this case, I'm just adding on top of that, you know, like a simple versions with a single points randomly drawn on each frames, and then connecting the dots to create the lines, you know, and then we get these artworks. So yeah, so hopefully you find this interesting and useful, and learning something about geometry nodes, simulation nodes, you know, inside the Blender 3.6. It can get really complicated with the nodes, but in the end it's gonna be like a tools, and you just need to create something out of it. So if it's really something, if is the doodles really something, like, you know, David Hockney says, you just like to create pictures, and depending on the tools you have, maybe, or some kind of assets that you already have, you will end up with an artwork, or maybe it's not an art, it's just like you're making pictures. And so does the picture actually worth anything? Is it commercial? Is your picture commercial? We don't know yet. Commercial, or you know, like, can you sell it? I don't know. It's the person who make the tool actually, do they actually make money out of this? We don't know. Is the person who make video tutorial will actually make money out of this? You can try. Maybe you get 1 cent or $1 or $10 or $100. We don't know. But is this art? You can guess yourself. Maybe this is an art. Maybe you can send this doodle to AI and then prompt something out of this. And, you know, even though it's chaotic, it's slightly 3D. It's not just a 2D doodles on a flat canvas. You can use brush to draw this, you know, but this is more like slightly more 3D. What if I render this as 3D sculpt, or create this using real wires? Is it, you know, like more like a sculpture that you can walk around it? It's probably could be like an art if you see something. Maybe this is a drawing of, you know, like a person sitting on something, you know. It's really, so in the end, it's just what you see is really inside your mind, and how you interpret it is really up to you. But in this case, hopefully you learn about geometry nodes, right? Single points, randomly generating points based on the position of the points and the scale of the empty, and then you connect the dots and you use noise to randomize, and you can add more. You can add more force like gravity. It's totally up to you, but that's really as basic as geometry nodes can do on chaotic looking threads. All right, so thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.